What if I told you animals bigger than a fire truck once shared this earth with humans? And no, these were not legends, not imagination. They were real creatures, as tangible as the animals we live with today. They are gone now. And if it were not for the bones, the footprints, and the hard evidence they left behind, we would struggle to believe they ever existed at all. In this video, we are not just counting giants. We are measuring them, estimating their true size, and tracing the exact pressures that turned that size into a weakness when the world changed. 6 extinct animals, 6 turning points, 6 endings. So if you think the African elephant or the blue whale is the best nature could do, number 6 will prove you wrong in seconds. It is quite literally a living blizzard on 4 legs. Hashtag 6 woolly mammoth. Remember Manny from the Ice Age movie? The big, shaggy, lovable one. He was inspired by a mammoth, and the real version was not a cartoon. It was a cold-adapted giant, built like an elephant but engineered for an ice age. Adults stood roughly 3 to 3.7 meters tall and could weigh about 5,500 to 7,300 kilograms. Several tons of animal, built to keep moving when everything else froze. And this was not just big, it was built for brutal. Some mammoths grew outer hair over 70 centimeters long, with an insulating undercoat and a fat layer that could reach around 8 centimeters. It did not just survive winter, it wore winter. Then there were the tusks. Not decorative, functional. Some measured around 3.8 meters along the curve, heavy enough to be real tools and real weapons. Now here is the part that makes the mammoth feel less like prehistory. Unlike most extinct animals, we are not guessing what it looked like. The mammoth is evidence. The earth preserved it, and we found it intact. Permafrost turned parts of the north into a freezer. Not just bones, but skin, fur, even organs. A famous calf named Liuba died roughly 42,000 years ago and was discovered in 2007. Preserved so well it still shocked scientists and the public. And then, as recently as 2024, researchers unveiled another preserved baby mammoth, Yana, around 50,000 years old, about 120 centimeters tall and over 100 kilograms, one of only a small number of intact mammoth bodies ever recovered. But the way the mammoth ended is where this turns dark. As the ice retreated, the grasslands shrank, wetlands spread, forests moved in, food shifted, paths closed, and the mammoth's greatest advantage, its size, started to turn against it. Because the bigger the body, the more it needs. When the buffet disappears, giants feel it first, and humans were already there, moving into the same spaces. Mammoths were not fast. They traveled in herds. They left tracks you could follow. One kill could feed a group for weeks, meat for food, fat for survival, bone and ivory for tools. So the mammoth did not vanish in one dramatic moment. It disappeared in slow motion. And it proves something brutal. Giants do not need an asteroid to go extinct. Sometimes all it takes is a changing world and pressure that never lets up. And if you think the mammoth was strange, the next giant flips your brain even harder. It takes an animal you associate with slow and innocent and turns it into a walking tank. Hashtag 5 ground sloth. This is where the word sloth stops meaning harmless. Because this one was slow the way a bulldozer is slow, heavy, armed, and almost impossible to intimidate once it decided to stand its ground. Some of the largest ground sloths, like Megatherium, reached up to 4 tons, about the weight of a bull elephant. And when it rose onto its hind legs, it could stand around 3.5 meters tall, not climbing, not reaching, standing. Despite the size, and despite the claws, it was not a predator. Chemical analysis of its teeth suggests it was a vegetarian, which makes the claws even more unsettling, because they were not for show. They were leveraged, they were defense. They were the reason you do not want to be the thing that gets too close. But humans did get close. We know these giant sloths overlapped with humans because scientists have found Megatherium fossils with cut marks, a blunt reminder that at some point it was food to someone. But the creepiest proof is not a bone, it is a moment. At White Sands in New Mexico, researchers found trackways that suggest a human followed a giant sloth by deliberately stepping into its footprints. Then the sloth's tracks twist into strange circles, which researchers interpret as the animal rising up and swinging its forelimbs in a defensive motion. Even the National Park Service describes the same haunting detail: human footprints inside the sloth's prints as it was tracked. So picture it, a massive animal rising up, turning, swiping the air, not running, not fleeing, warning the human to back off. That is not a nature documentary moment. That is a confrontation written into the ground, and yet it still disappeared. Most giant ground sloths vanished near the end of the last ice age, around 11,700 years ago, as warming climates reshaped habitats and food landscapes across the Americas. But the timing gets darker when you add humans. At a site in Argentina, researchers reported definitive evidence of a giant ground sloth being hunted and butchered around 12,600 years ago. And some held on longer. On islands like Cuba and Hispaniola, ground sloths survived thousands of years after mainland populations faded, and researchers have argued their final disappearances line up closely with human arrival around 4,400 years ago. So this was not a weak animal that simply lost. It was a giant that got squeezed. Climate changed the world, and humans added the final pressure. For the next one, you gotta brace yourself, because this one doesn't confront you on land. It removes you from the water in one bite. #4 Megalodon. There are sharks today that feel dangerous, and then there was Megalodon, the one that makes the word dangerous sound too small. Fossil scaling suggests a creature so large its head could be longer than a car. That is the scale we're dealing with. And here is the creepiest part. We do not know Megalodon from a full body. We know it from what it left behind teeth. Most of the fossils are broken teeth, scattered like evidence. Some are at least 16 centimeters tall, and some estimates push them toward 20. At that size, it stops feeling like a tooth and starts feeling like a weapon. And those teeth let scientists scale the animal. One reconstruction suggests that at around 16 meters long, Megalodon could have a head about 4.65 meters, a dorsal fin around 1.62 meters tall, a tail close to 3.85 meters high. That is not a big shark. That is a moving machine, built to take a whale-sized bite and keep going. And it ruled for a long time. Megalodon dominated oceans through the Neogene, and by the time humans ever existed, it was already gone. The best supported fossil record places its extinction around the early to late Pliocene boundary, roughly 3.6 million years ago. So, what ended it? The ocean changed, and the throne started shrinking. By the end of the Pliocene, global cooling reshaped marine life. Cooler waters meant less suitable habitat for a predator tied to warmer seas. Prey shifted. Prey declined. Migration routes changed. Suddenly, the hunt was not as simple as it used to be, and as Megalodon's timeline closes, another pressure rises. The modern great white. As ecosystems tightened and food became a harder fight, competition sharpened. And that's how the biggest mouth in the ocean ran out of room. And if that felt terrifying, remember, teeth are only one kind of power. The next giant did not need teeth. It had height. #3 Paraceratherium. After Megalodon, you would think the ocean is where nature saved its biggest nightmares. But on land, it built something just as impossible. A rhinoceros with no horn, and a body so tall it could look down on you without even trying. Paraceratherium lived from about 34 to 23 million years ago across Eurasia, and the first fossils were found in what is now Pakistan. This was likely the largest land mammal ever built. Modern estimates often put it around 4.8 meters at the shoulder, about 7.4 meters long, with a mass roughly in the 15 to 20 ton range, which is why one major museum describes it as weighing more than 3 times as much as an African elephant. And the details get even crazier when you look at the head. One of the largest skulls is about 1.33 meters long, so it did not need a horn to dominate its world. It had reached. Its skull and nasal anatomy suggest a prehensile upper lip, or even a short tapir-like trunk, basically a built-in grabbing tool for browsing. And unlike a lot of prehistoric giants, this one is still getting rewritten. In 2021, researchers described a new species from northwestern China dated to about 26.5 million years ago, helping map how these giant rhinos moved and evolved across Asia. So how did a giant so massive go extinct? Well, sadly, no one knows for sure. It disappeared around the end of the Oligocene, roughly 23 million years ago. The exact cause is still debated, but the timing lines up with a world that was shifting toward cooler and drier conditions, with forests shrinking and more open habitats expanding. And for a giant built to browse, that kind of change is never gentle. If Paraceratherium just reset your sense of size on land, do not look forward. Look up, because the next giant was not just massive, it was airborne. #2 Quetzalcoatlus. The closest real creature Earth ever produced to a dragon was Quetzalcoatlus. Most people are wrong about Quetzalcoatlus. It was not a dinosaur, it was a pterosaur, a flying reptile, and one of the best candidates for the largest flying animal ever found. It lived at the very end of the Cretaceous in what is now North America. Most estimates put its wingspan around 10 to 11 meters, basically small aircraft territory. And it was terrifying even on the ground. Reconstructions often place it around 4 to 5 meters tall, roughly giraffe height, with a long neck and a long, toothless beak. So, if it unfolded its wings in front of you, it would not feel like a creature taking off. It would feel like the sky opening. For years, people imagined it as a dragon that lived in the air. But more recent research points to a stranger reality. Many Azhdarchid pterosaurs were likely strong, confident walkers, and Quetzalcoatlus is often described as a terrestrial stalker, more like a giant heron on land than a seabird skimming waves. A tall hunter patrolling floodplains, scanning for prey, then striking fast. That means the scariest version of this animal is not overhead. It is standing still in the distance, watching, then stepping toward you on folded wings like walking limbs. And then comes the ending. Quetzalcoatlus went extinct because the entire food chain collapsed. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid impact triggered global chaos. Dust and smoke filled the sky, sunlight dropped, temperatures fell, and ecosystems crashed. When plants and oceans collapsed, pterosaurs like Quetzalcoatlus did not have enough food or stable habitat to survive the sudden worldwide shutdown, and that is why it is gone. A flying giant with a biology so strange, nothing alive today truly replaces it. The last on the list today is something that will remind you of the giant anaconda, except this one was longer, heavier, and built to crush. #1 Titanoboa. Let us just say this. If this thing were still alive, you would never go near a river again. Titanoboa was not a big snake. Big snakes are anacondas and reticulated pythons. Titanoboa is what happens when nature drags that idea all the way to the end of the slider. It lived around 58 to 60 million years ago, in a period that came after the dinosaurs were gone. And that timing matters, because it tells you the world recovered fast enough to start producing giants again. For this giant, we did not imagine its size. We measured it from fossils. Most estimates put Titanoboa at roughly 12 to 13 meters long. That is longer than a bus. And it was not a thin snake either. It was thick, heavy, the kind of body that would not look like an animal at first. It would look like the river itself moving. Now, the scary part is what that size implies. Snakes do not get that big in a normal world. Titanoboa was cold-blooded, which means its size is like a thermometer, a living clue. Its existence points to a hotter, more extreme tropical climate, warm enough for a reptile to grow into something that feels impossible. But the part that makes it different is how this snake did not need speed to kill. It had physics. Titanoboa likely lived in swampy river systems, slow water, thick vegetation, low visibility. It could stay hidden, then strike, coil, and tighten like machinery, not for seconds, for as long as it took. And it was not limited to small prey. At that scale, it could handle animals that would be untouchable to modern snakes. Huge fish, turtle-sized meals, crocodile relatives that would look like threats to anything else. So, when people picture Titanoboa as a bigger anaconda, they are missing the real horror. An anaconda is a giant in today's world. Titanoboa was a giant in a world built to grow giants. Outro. There we have it. 6 giants that once felt impossible and then proved something worse. Even the biggest bodies on Earth can be erased. On Earth,